So you have a bill, a private member's bill that's come up in Parliament recently. It was pulled out of the box on June 28th, and it's prohibition of gang insignia in government premises. So pretty much from what I see, the target of the bill is to stop gang-related clothing and signs from in public buildings, to eradicate any form of intimidation between either the staff or people using those public services and what have you. So is that pretty much?
Yeah, largely that's right. So it's had its most of its first reading in Parliament. We will soon be finishing that first reading and voting on it to send it to a committee. And what this is about is probably twofold. The first is that gangs serve no good purpose in New Zealand society. Largely when they come together, gang members are involved in crime. We know from the police that the gangs are heavily involved in the manufacture and distribution of drugs in New Zealand. They are and can be violent individuals. Interestingly, some of them individually probably can be fairly reasonable people, but when they put that patch on, collectively things seem to change. So what I'm saying, the message here is that if you work in a government building, if you're a teacher or a doctor or a nurse, or if you go to seek assistance from your government or your council, you should be free to do so, free of intimidation and the potential for harm. And gang insignia does intimidate and concern people. So this will make it an offence to display gang insignia in any government building, local council building in New Zealand, any public school or swimming pool, public school or hospital, and the grounds, including a swimming pool as well, in New Zealand. The other thing I think it will do, I hope it will do, is send a message. We have a lot of young people, young Māori men who are attracted to gangs for a number of reasons. And it can start at a fairly young age, predominantly in provincial New Zealand. And we know statistically it's not a career path. It leads to misery and harm to them and their families and others in communities. So anything we can do and everything we can do to make that patch a badge of shame, not a badge of pride or something to aspire to, is worth the effort.
Yeah, and obviously with any piece of legislation that goes through, you get opposition.
Sure.
And as we've seen with Manapai leader Honi Harawira, who's come out and said your bill is woefully underprepared, and he's also labelled it as racist. He has said that I don't really like it when government uses the media to create an image of gangs that causes people to be afraid, and then plays to the fear to ram through bills like this that deny gang members the civil rights that all New Zealanders enjoy. And he also goes on to say, apart from being a deeply racist piece of legislation, the majority of those targeted will be Māori, and this bill is woefully underprepared. So his point is, he's coming to say that it's a target on minorities, the Māori in particular, and that the bill's being played out in the media is something that's just attacking this minority in New Zealand.
Yeah. So, look, a couple of things I'd say there. The first is I'm not going to get into a big debate with Mr. Harawira or anybody else about racial issues, because this big bill treats every gang that's named by the legislation the same, irrespective of their makeup, where their members come from, what they look like, what they sound like. You only get your name on the list to be covered by this if you are in a gang, not an organisation, and that gang has criminal intent. So it doesn't matter who the member is, it will apply to all of them in the same way. I think that the real challenge here, and at one level I agree with Mr. Harawira, gangs do target young Māori, and it has a much greater effect upon young Māori than any other group in New Zealand. And that's not acceptable, and it's just not good enough. But this deals with the organisation and the patch and what it stands for. And any New Zealander, whether they're a member of a gang or not, who walks into one of these buildings and displays gang insignia, will face arrest, confiscation and a fine of up to $2,000. Don't have to be a member of that gang or not. But it treats every New Zealander the same. If you don't do it, you have nothing to fear from this legislation. And then finally, it is about the gang as opposed to the person. If a person does display, takes a patch along to a school ground to watch a rugby game, they face arrest. But they'll be welcome back the next day, because it's not the individual here, it's that insignia and what it stands for.
Yeah, so these people have the ultimate choice of slapping on that patch every morning, and if they want to be affiliated with that patch and the things that come along with that patch, it's a decision they make that morning, or
Yeah, look,
being a part of it?
the legislation has been pretty well thought out. I've spent 2 years researching it, talking to people and drafting it. I've tried to make it as fair as it can be. So, it will be an offence to display gang insignia or one of these places unless you have good reason to. So, if a gang member must rush into hospital because somebody is injured and they're bringing them in, well, that would be a reason probably. If they're injured themselves, that would be a reason that, they wouldn't be breaking the law.
Yeah.
If they want to pop in and see one of their mates, then that wouldn't be a good reason. That would be against the law. And it's not being rammed through Parliament. I've had to go out and talk to a number of parties to seek their support. It's not a piece of government legislation, it's a private member's bill. I've received support from 3 other parties, New Zealand First, the ACT Party and the Mana Party, and we'll send it to committee, and then all New Zealanders, including gang members, should they wish, can have their say. They get to go to committee, talk about this, and see whether or not they support it, they want changes to it, and we'll take it a step at a time. But I firmly believe it's important legislation. Anything we can do to lessen the influence of gangs in New Zealand is important. Anything we can do to lessen the harm gangs inflict through intimidation and misery is important. Anything we can do to allow the police better and greater access to individual gang members to find out about where they're manufacturing drugs and pee and how they're trying to sell it to our kids in the streets is worthwhile, and I stand behind this legislation fully.
Yeah, and really there's not a lot of difference in the what banks have. You can't have hats, glasses and hoodies and if you want to go into a bank.
Well, that's right. That's right. In fact, you can't wear a helmet into a Winds office. They won't allow it. So, in Parliament, interestingly, Mr. Harawira, must wear a jacket and a tie when he goes into the House to speak. He does it.
Yeah.
Probably would prefer not to. He does it. So everywhere there are conditions placed on being a responsible member of a society. This is no different here. We're just saying the rules are a little bit different today than they were before. Incidentally, there are a number of marae in New Zealand that have banned the display and wearing of gang insignia on those marae. Down in Murupara, after the death of 2 young men, slightly gang related in 2009, all gang insignia is banned from marae there. And so, if there's a reason to ban the display of that insignia on maraes, I think that's just as valid to look towards government departments, places that everyday New Zealanders go to seek support from their government. I think they have a right to be free of intimidation.
Yeah, and anything to try and combat gangs from getting bigger than what they are is going to be great. And we're very fortunate in New Zealand that our gangs aren't so bad. I was watching an episode of QI on the BBC program with Stephen Fry hosting it, and he was saying something about his friend in Los Angeles wanting to film over the harbour for a documentary he was doing, and that he went in a police helicopter and he heard this ping, ping, ping on the bottom of the vehicle, of the helicopter, and he asked what was it, and it was the gangs just raising their guns and taking aim at the helicopter just because it said police on it.
Is that right?
So we're quite lucky that we don't go that far. Anything to stop it from going that far is going to be good anyway.
So it's a problem the world over, I'm sure, but I'm pretty focused on New Zealand, particularly in my electorate, and we'll see what happens in the debate in Parliament. I have enough support to put it on to the latter stages. The Green Party, the Labour Party, the Mana Party have indicated they won't be supporting it. But that's democracy. I've just got to make sure there are more people to vote in favour than against, and it will become a law. Yeah,
and one other thing I saw in this bill is policing it. You're not giving the people that work at these places or people at these places the power in policing. It's the police themselves.
Yeah, that's absolutely right, and it's a very important point to make. Just as we don't ask doctors or nurses to catch burglars or round up drug dealers, I'm not asking them to police this legislation. It is for the police to enforce it, and there are powers in there for them to stop and arrest at any time, not just when the crime is being committed. So, whether they happen to be there or are called when somebody walks into a Housing New Zealand office, or they have information that this has happened and they find them a day, a week, a month later, they have the ability to enforce the law. It also is not against the law for a member of the public service to serve somebody with gang insignia on if they come into one of these premises. It's only against the law to wear it there, and again, it's for the police to enforce. Yeah, well, thank you for setting a foundation past combating violent gangs in New Zealand. Hopefully it gets through soon. Good.